Hello, I'm Brad.
And I'm Jason.
You are listening to
Dice in Mind.
I was thinking back, it was probably, I'm thinking of the timeline. So 1987, bunch of us were hanging out at a friend's house, we ended up sleeping over and swimming in the pool and all that. I remember the next morning, Jason's wondering where I'm going with this. That morning, he said, "Hey, you should read this. You might like this." I was always into sci-fi and everything like that. And it was a book, first book of the Dragonlance Chronicles.
Here we go. Okay.
And ended up reading and picking up the trilogy. And then read the Legends trilogy, which is about the Majere brothers. And I read a lot of other stuff in there, but all that. But those 6 books, the 2 trilogies, were probably, that was the closest I got to D&D all through middle school and high school and all that. But loved those books, read them multiple times.
Yeah.
In fact, it makes me think I should read them again.
That could be cool.
But I was fascinated by the faith that was developed in those, as well as the concept of, and Jason doesn't know all this stuff because he had, I can't believe it, he had maybe a little bit more to life and didn't read them. But
I was reading sci-fi. That's the only difference.
Yeah, well, I guess, okay, potato. Cataclysm and Dragons. And so while you and I have gamed, we haven't done a lot with dragons.
No.
We haven't we'll talk about this another time. We haven't been at a point where our characters were leveled enough that would make it any interesting.
I was just going to say.
Yeah, I did introduce one, but using my well-known DM prerogative, I made it worthwhile for you guys to actually attack and beat a dragon.
Yep.
And I was actually excited because that was the first time I could introduce a dragon into a game that I was playing or GMing.
It was really cool. It remains one of it, that I told you this at the time. That is one of my absolute favorite moments in role playing.
Yeah, that was a fun one. And I got to do a dragon. And so we've had Jeff Ashworth on. We've talked about the Game Master's books for NPCs, traps, puzzles, random encounters. The new one came out from Media Lab Books.
Yep.
That Aaron Hübrich led on. The Game Master's book of Legendary Dragons. And this book, I've talked about it before. I've had it on pre-order for a while.
Beautiful.
It doesn't talk about it. It goes beyond talking about the types of dragons. You're going to hear me flip pages. It's going to actually talk about actual dragons.
As
like the ravaged worm,
right.
Fury, the dragon queen of hell.
Yep.
Glitz, the rapscallion.
Yep. And as individuals, as legendary individuals with their own lore.
Yeah. And so, you and I have talked about it is a theme now of RPG materials lit. Yeah. And this was another book that I could read as lit.
Yeah.
So,
and it just so happens that in a moment we're going to share with you our interview with its creator. Right, with Aaron Hübrich. We had the real pleasure of speaking with him not long ago about not just his thoughts on this book, how it came to be, but also just his evolution as an artist.
Yeah, and obviously his group's partnership with Media Lab in putting together this book, but the work he's done with with Jetpack 7, which is the publishing arm of the company that he has, and all the different books, Legendary Dragons, Gods and Goddesses, Masters and Minions.
I mean, great
we'll talk
stuff.
more about it.
Yeah. So I think let's just get there, Brad. It's a really interesting, wide-ranging conversation, and Aaron was gracious with his background, with his story. Aaron Hübrich is a writer, artist, and designer, publisher at Jetpack 7, creative director at Conceptopolis, a company that contributed hundreds of art pieces for the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition core books. Aaron has been playing Dungeons & Dragons since there were yellow character sheets that didn't take to erasers very well, and has fond memories of Thack Zero.
So as I mentioned earlier, I've been a big fan of the Game Masters books that came out by Media Lab Books, and the latest one is in my hands, the Game Masters book of Legendary Dragons, and we are lucky to have Aaron Hübrich with us tonight. So Aaron, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Hey, so if you don't mind, I'm gonna kind of step back. How did the connection with Media Lab come together in terms of, did you have content already, or was it something that you made the connection and then you started developing content? How did that all, what was the genesis of that?
Yeah.
Well, I would imagine it originally came because Phil from Media Lab originally approached us after he saw our Kickstarted book called Legendary Dragons. And so it was from there. I have a funny story. He actually emailed me a couple times, and you get those emails like, hey, we're really interested in licensing your product. Please give me a call back or contact me right away. And I was like, whatever, man. So I just kind of, spam it, goes right to the spam folder. Like, I get this stuff all the time, right? So then like a week later, get another one, but it's a little bit more, the tone had shifted at that point. Like, I've been trying to get a hold of Aaron at Jetpack 7. Is there anyone there I can speak to? So then I was like, oh, okay. So he actually left a phone number and we got to chatting. But yeah, that was basically it. He got a hold of Legendary Dragons and thought that would be something that they were interested in for the Game Master series. And it just kind of, it kind of blossomed from there. So we really appreciate them reaching out to us. But it almost didn't happen because it almost didn't enter.
It's kind of the age we're in, though. I mean, you get all this spam all the time, right? Even my daughters get texts that are spam, and I just just delete it. Don't even read it.
Yeah, it happens to especially publishers like us or small publishers like us, because it's, back when I used to do independent comic books back in the 90s, there would be studios that would contact us and say, we want to make you the next great movie. And it was just, okay, guys, they had lots of promises, lots of just trying to talk you up and whatnot. But, 99% of the time it's fake, but this time it was real. And I'm thankful for it.
Hey, just to backtrack for those that aren't familiar. So like you said, kind of the genesis was Phil and Media Lab seeing your Legendary Dragons book that was out on Kickstarter. What is the content different between the two? How do they differ?
There is some similarities, but we added a lot more in this version of the book. The original book, I think, if my count is correct, I want to say it was 19, maybe 16, 18, 19 dragons, something like that, just off of memory. And then so we added a lot more dragons. I think we added more, six or seven more dragons for this book, added some adventures. So there's definitely more in this, but we went from, I think, 150 to 170 pages to 240 pages. So there's a lot more content on this one.
Wow. I know for me, Jason kind of laughs because when Wizards came out with Fizban's book for Dragons, I was on it, and then when I saw this book come out for Dragons, I've kind of got a thing for them. I don't. Yeah,
you do.
Yeah, when I don't do a lot of dragoning when we game because we are still we don't have a lot of time, but whenever possible, I try to implement one, and that's what caught my attention.
Well, and just because you pre-ordered this one right way in advance, like you had told me about, I had no idea it was coming. It was so Aaron, I have to ask, so how does one, this is probably a stupid question, how does one write for dragons? I mean, how does one come up with so many alternative pathways? I mean, these aren't your typical NPCs.
Well, I'll steal a little bit from Jim Pinto, who helped write a few of these dragons in here. And what he a lot of it is like, I never think of it in terms like this, but he kind of described it, and I agreed with him pretty much right away. But imagine, I'm not a big time, WWE or wrestling fan,
Yeah.
but he described it that every single wrestler has its own distinct personality. So if you just kind of keep that in mind when you're writing, that these are ancient, intelligent creatures, they're all going to have their own personalities, and that was kind of like the aha, if you want to use that cliche. But that was the light kind of went on that, okay, let's have a foundation of a character type,
Yeah.
and then go from there. So you at least get a basis. You get the bad guy, you get the good guy, you get the heel, you get the all these types. So that was kind of the foundation in which we were approaching each one. But we also wanted to make it different than what you might see a Wizard of the Coast.
Right.
That was kind of, I might be getting a little ahead here, but that was one of the primary reasons we wanted to make each dragon unique, in that, okay, you're not fighting a let's say a black dragon or a red dragon, which you kind of know what to expect. You know what's coming. It's like the metagaming aspect of that part of it. And we were trying to get away from that a little bit.
As distinct characters, as distinct personalities.
That's right.
Okay, interesting.
That's the legendary aspect of that.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm just, yeah, like Brad said, we really haven't played with dragons we haven't even really entertained it beyond.
Well, we did.
Okay, sorry, but that was there was the one, but that wasn't really it wasn't the same, right? It was a simplified interaction for my brand new PC, but that's a far cry from creating characters who are so old, so powerful, etc. Very, very, very cool. I mean, do you guys involved with the creation, do you enjoy playing with, through, around, against dragons in your own games? Do you even have much chance to play these days?
Oh yeah, the idea that we have, because we know it is kind of, it's interesting that the game is called Dungeons and Dragons, but your interaction potential is kind of limited because they're so darn powerful. So, but what you can do is that there can be the heartbeat behind it. There's a driving force behind this. You can build an entire campaign around these particular dragons, and so that was kind of how we approached it. That you may not face these dragons until level 12 or beyond. Right. However, there's the history of it. There's the reason why you're dealing with the fallout of a particular dragon. There might be a dragon that you've heard. You go into a town and you discover that there's this incredible beer, but it's rumored to be brewed by a dragon, and you're just wondering, stuff like that. That it causes interest. It causes you to move forward as players to find out more and more and more, and then you eventually encounter this dragon, or you don't. It can continue on. But this, just looking for reasons for players to keep pushing forward, and maybe it kind of works its way in and out. But it's still there. It's still in the backdrop.
Okay.
I don't know if I answered your question.
You absolutely
did.
Yeah, I'm even more intrigued.
There's so many different directions you could go when writing material. And I can't fathom it. I'm not. Jason's more of a writer than I am, but he writes in a different field. Yeah. What was, even with the original Legendary Dragons book, what was the onus behind going in the kind of that direction versus just something else as an example?
Yeah.
Well, I think we found out early on, one of our very first book that we made was called Gods and Goddesses.
Yeah.
And from that book, we realized that we've found a kind of a niche that will, instead of having a bunch of different deities in that book, we concentrated on a handful, let's say 20. Mm-hmm. And so from there, it gave us the freedom to explore a little bit more, to give a little bit more backstory, to give a little bit more history. It just gives it more meat on the bone, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we thought we can create another, quote, monster book, but we didn't really want to do that. We wanted to kind of throw our brains into this book a little bit more, instead of it just having, there's nothing wrong with monster, but they're fantastic. But we like lore. We like that background. Right. We like the storyline that we can present. So a GM doesn't have to necessarily think about that kind of thing. They can just flip through and go, oh, this will be perfect. This is exactly where I want to go. And then I can I can segue into the next adventure that I have planned. So that's kind of I hate to use the word niche again, but that's kind of where we fall into it. And that's our comfort zone, is having some kind of a large amount of enough lore there that you can work with as a GM.
I mean, I think I can speak for the both of us, Brad. I mean, we're biased because we love this kind of stuff. We've been talking on a bunch of episodes and among ourselves just this notion of RPG materials as lit. And I mean, that just keeps coming up for me as I'm listening to you describe, the lore and the legendary stuff of these are whole fleshed out stories. This is writing. This is literature. This isn't just stat blocks.
Yeah. And that's actually, I mean, writing the stat blocks, there's someone that might be looking at this just through the surface and go, well, all these things are like end of the game monsters and they're all CR30. Well, yeah, they are. Not all of them. But there's so much more to that don't just look at the stats, because I think that's a habit that, I mean, all gamers, I think everyone that's played D&D flips through and goes, oh, see, I could totally beat a Tarask. I mean, look at that. I mean, it's got this and that. So that's their inner dialogue. Well, we would challenge players and GMs, don't just look at the stats, look at how you can put this thing in your game so that when your players do encounter it, either in passing or at the end of the big campaign, it's there if you want it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in even looking through the book, and I mean, I read through a lot of books just as lit RPG books.
Yeah.
I'm a goof that way. And that's what kind of really attracted me to this was, specifying specific dragons. I guess
it still works. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. But, reading about each dragon as literature.
Yes.
Even if I wasn't necessarily going to implement one right away, mostly because, Jason can barely throw throwing axes without them.
Hey, level 3 is level 3, my friend. I mean, we can.
So we're not there yet, but I still love reading this material. And I guess it goes back to, the days when I think we're probably relatively close in age when the Dragonlance books out, the original Chronicles, and reading those. And that's where kind of my fascination came in. So, even stepping back further. So, and correct me here. So you have, independent of even Media Lab, coordinating with Media Lab, you have a separate entity that you also do publishing out of, if I'm correct, right?
Yep. It's called Jetpack 7.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want me to, I'll give you the abridged or the short version of how Jetpack 7 even came about.
Yeah.
Well, we have Jetpack 7 is a subsidiary of our art studio called Conceptopolis, and Conceptopolis started back in 2006 officially, October. Yeah, so we're that old now. it just dawned on me how old we are now as a company. But so we started out working with Hasbro back in 2006. And there was the 25th anniversary line of G.I. Joe toys that had come out around that time.
We were talking about this right before we recorded. Okay, so
really?
keep going.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
I'll tell you something about it after you're done, because I'm fascinated by the story.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. No, I found out that they were getting ready to relaunch that. It was in 2006. So we were approached by them to see again, this I could probably go on an hour with just this part, but I'll give you the really short version. No. So Hasbro, or what at the time was called Kenner in Cincinnati, Kenner moved up to Rhode Island. I want to say back in the late 90s, and when they took some of their assets, like the card art that you remember, the G.I. Joes, how they were painted. Most of that art was just given away or distributed or lost, air quotes lost. I don't know. Either way, they only had a few pieces left. So they needed someone to be able to recreate that art, but they wanted it done in Photoshop. So they asked me, the art director there that I knew, his name was Adam Pagano. And he asked me, he said, can you guys, I know you guys do comic book art, but can you guys recreate this gouache style art? And I'm like, absolutely. And I was looking around like, how the hell are we going to do this? I just completely lied through my teeth, right? So we did a couple test pieces, and long story short, we got the gig, and then we just were knee deep in G.I. Joe art for about 2.5 years. We did all the package art for them. Did a lot of box. I'm looking around my office right now, looking at some pieces. So, and then that helped us get established within Hasbro. We took that and just it started building from there. And eventually we made our way. We did card art for years. We did Legend of the Five Rings art. That was how I started my relationship with Jim Pinto. He was the art director at the time there. So that's how our company worked. We build our relationships and then just keep going from there. And then we eventually ended up over at Wizard of the Coast. My wife needed some dental surgery. We were just happened to be up in Seattle over a weekend. And so I talked to the guys at Wizard of the Coast. John Shindahetty was the art director, creative director there, I think. And he invited me in while my wife was recovering from surgery, dental surgery. Went through the offices and he's like showing me around and yeah, we're getting ready to do a new version of D&D. Don't tell anybody. I'm like, oh, okay. Because yeah, I know that there were rumors of it. So yeah. Oh, by the way, we need some art. I'm like, okay. So it just was very organic.
That's cool.
He asked, hey, how much art can you do in about 6 months? I'm like, well, off the top of my head, I think we could do X, Y, Z. And so that's how we got the gig doing Dungeons and Dragons art. So the art that you see in the 5th edition Dungeon Masters guide, that's 99% of ours. We did about a third of the monsters in the monster manual.
That's so cool.
I have the book right in my hand right here because it's sitting on my desk.
You got to point to it.
Yeah. So
all the magic items you're seeing, about a third of the monsters in the monster manual. And then it's just, sometimes I pinch myself because we got to do a lot of cool stuff. So but that's kind of how we got to this point. Had a friend of mine, he created a book called The Baby Bestiary. And that's ultimately what got me thinking, you know what, we have so much talent available to us on the art side.
Yeah.
I haven't done publishing. I thought I'm an idiot for getting back into publishing, but I missed it. I missed getting back. I used to do independent comic books back in the 90s. And I thought, you know what, it can't be that much different, right? So no, I wasn't that naive, but we took that dive because I was, silly enough to get back into this idea that I thought, we can do this too, but we can do it with more colorful pieces. And so we kickstarted Gods and Goddesses, and that's where we are now. And that's, I guess at the end of the day, Phil saw we garnered enough attention with the books that we published. That's how we struck up a relationship with Media Lab, Phil and Jeff and those guys. So It's been great. I mean, I gave you about the shortest version that I can give you, but that's basically our backstory.
So and obviously no giveaways here, but what's next, or what would you like to see next for Jetpack 7?
We currently have a Kickstarter called Masters, Minions, and Tactics, which is an expansion to our original Masters and Minions book, which is basically an encounter book that focuses on a villain or a bad guy, if you want to call it that, and their usage of minions. So we focused on that. Okay. And we did 15 Masters and Minions. It was about a 100-page book originally. Jeez. And it's just been in the back of our minds to just redo that because we ran out of books. So let's just have an excuse to do a second printing, expand on that, add a lot more tactics in it. But it's currently on Kickstarter. I've got funded last week. So we're in good shape.
Congratulations. There. Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeez. Yeah, you guys are busy.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit, but yeah, it's a good busy though.
Yeah, and like I think of your work in the D&D guy. I mean like that, you just become part of history. You've become like this fundamental part of D&D forever. That's awfully neat.
It is neat, and it's one of those I don't disagree, and it's one of those, oh my gosh. I mean, because now it's visualization time with Aaron.
All right.
We're ready. We're ready.
Okay, so imagine I don't know, I want to say a 12-year-old kid in LaGrange, Kentucky, outside of Louisville, Kentucky, and he's got this really thick country accent, and a friend of his slaps down a yellow character sheet and makes him draw an elf fighter. And I'm like, what is this for? What is this character sheet for? Oh, it's for this game called Dungeons and Dragons. And I'm like, oh, well, oh, right. You mean the cartoon? No, man, it's a game. And so it's like you have those conversations as a kid. And so you investigate some more. And so I'll give you the shorter version of this story too. I fell in love with I found out that Jeff Easley and Larry Elmore were from Kentucky also. And I thought, man, are you kidding me? Because I can draw. And I thought, I wonder if this could be, it's kind of like seeing you're good at baseball as a kid and you see a baseball player on TV. Well, that was my baseball players back then, or those guys. And I'm thinking,
That's
man,
cool.
I want to work there. I want to work at this place called TSR. And so I made it my mission to be the next great, TSR artist. I was hell-bent on that. And so from there on, it was just D&D 24/7, learning how to draw like those guys. So,
Wow.
but yeah, to be a part of that, to be even in the same breath, be in the same sentence as those guys is just, it's kind of it's one of those, oh my gosh, it still gives me chills to think about. And my wife and I were at Gen Con years ago, and we sat literally two seats away from Jeff Easley, and she's like elbowing me, like, go over there and talk to him. I'm like, no, man, I can't do it. I can't meet him. It's gonna turn me out. And he turned out to be the nicest guy ever.
That's great.
He really did. So anyway, that's what I was the nerd kid who loved D&D art, and here we are doing D&D art, and it's really cool.
So
Well,
cool.
and think about how much of a footprint, such a bigger footprint 5e is.
Oh my God.
Versus back when we were kids, when it was still Redbox original, or even early editions of AD&D. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Wisconsinite. TSR, is about an hour, or Lake Geneva is about 45 minutes southwest of me.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I have a soft spot for it, but
I mean, just the fact we had to hide.
That?
I mean, it was like it was like this thing you only talked about. It's almost like code. You had to slip it out of your book bag and kind of look around, make sure either it's like a secret symbol or something like.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I didn't know Joe played D&D, man. We got to talk to him. Okay.
Yeah, you have. Yeah, I remember a kid used to carry the book around. He was unabashedly unafraid of anything that would come up on it, but I didn't play much because I was a band geek and everything else, but but just the idea of you being young and pondering writing or drawing and being an artist for TSR, and now you're doing it in a game that has grown exponentially.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Did you so how much gaming do you still get a chance to do?
Lately it's honestly been terrible, but I mean with the COVID stuff, I'm kind of old school, man. I have to play in person. I mean, I love the fact that there's so many more people now being able to play online, and that's great. And it's just that's just a personal choice on my end that I just want to get. It's kind of like I played fantasy football too. So here's how I compare the two. And so, the last couple of years they've been doing fantasy football drafts online, and it's fine. But I'm like, this is the first time we can get together and drink some beer and talk football and talk trash to each other and all that stuff.
Yep.
Well, that's the same thing. It's my same mentality when I play D&D. So I want to, but fortunately, I want in this part. On a positive note, there's local stores around here that start doing it on like Friday and Saturday night, and it's game nights at stores, which again is new to me. It's probably the usual thing for most people that are younger than 40, and it's just I want to get back. I want to go there, show up incognito, and just be the older guy. Hey,
I
can
was just gonna
play?
say, are you gonna go in like as like Joe Sixpack or something like that? Because if they catch your name, they may put one and one together and realize who they're actually gaming with.
I'll just use my porn star name or something.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh, you can't just leave it like that.
Yeah, you can.
Oh, okay. Now you want to know.
No, we
Yeah.
can't, because now if he's gonna use it, he can't.
I
He
know,
can't
then I'll
say
give
it.
it
Oh,
away.
that's a good point. That's a good
Just
point.
say
Well,
it's a common name with a mountain range. You know, this is the first street I lived on was a large mountain range. So it works really well.
So Bob Grand Tetons, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well, there goes the E on it, right?
there
I just
there are
made it
so many
explicit.
things conceptually wrong with that idea, but still, I like where this is going.
No, but I'm similar fantasy football. I kind of stopped playing during the pandemic because the online thing where you can't get together and do the draft and everything like that, it just didn't appeal to me. Now I haven't really ever, other than on a rare occasion when I was younger, gamed with people at like a store or at a table.
Yeah.
By the time Jason and I started getting back into this in the middle part of the last decade, there was still very little time, and then we decided to do a podcast and we have even less time. But the idea, I'm with you, the idea of getting in front of people, I think that's almost in many ways and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like it's an our generation thing. The younger generations don't necessarily seem to care. The Snapchat and the TikTok generations don't care as much about being in front of each other. Zoom or whatever the case is, they can still be content and game that way.
I think it's great. I honestly think it's great because if it's, as long as the spirit of the game continues, even if it's in a different format, it would be like me saying, well, I don't like World of Warcraft. That is just not cool. I can't imagine doing, if you're enjoying it in the format that you're using, then go for it. Just play, just have fun, be with friends. If you meet them in person, it's even going to be cooler.
Yeah, that's right.
When you're talking about GI Joe, it's funny because I showed Jason an intro to a cartoon that was popular in the late 80s, a show called Mask, where they drove these cars. Okay, Mask, you're close to the same age. Well, right around the time he started doing that art, they retconned in some form the Mask characters into the GI Joe universe, and that's what I was talking with him about, and I showed him the intro of Mask, and so then you bring up GI Joe.
Oh,
it was just
God.
it was so Matt Tracker from Mask was actually they created a GI Joe character of him, a figure, action figure is what I remember calling him.
I was not even aware. See, I'm pretty good on that stuff, and now I've just added to my repertoire of useless knowledge.
Yeah, useless. I mean, that's Jason. Jason was probably like, "Why are you talking?"
Sounds
about
about right.
But, yeah. So,
but I love that.
Yeah, but I watched the GI Joe and the Mask and all that. The Dungeons and Dragons cartoon on Saturday morning. Even Dungeon Layer, that early video game that they tried to make look like a cartoon.
I remember playing that at the arcade, and I could not figure out, right? They put it was like right in the doorway to the arcade in the mall, because it was, of course, like the smoothest, glitziest, and most expensive game in the whole arcade.
It cost
that no one could win.
Right? It cost $1, and like there was no explanation for how to move it. So like with your first jump, you knew you were seconds away from dying. And you couldn't walk away. You had to keep trying it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
It was a very frustrating game. That's why I played what was it? Where you played the Barbarian's Life is Getting Low. You remember that? I just hear it.
The Red Warrior is about to die.
What game was that?
We played that with the most of my Froshier and grades were dedicated, sadly, to that game.
What game was that, Jason?
I'm blocking. I just lost the name of it, but I can't tell you how many.
It wasn't the Bard's Tale. It wasn't
no.
Wizardry. You played 4 characters.
Yep.
Up to 4.
Yep.
Oh.
And
you ate,
that's going to be a worm in my brain now until I can figure out what that game was. So, and that was that on the NES or the Super? I can't remember when.
I'm thinking arcade, man. That's
Was it
what I'm-
arcade?
Oh, I never played that.
There was
I don't know which machine.
I'll look back. 'Cause
Aaron, the problem
ironically-
was Froshier, which is when Brad and I met in my room. My friend / roommate and I had 4 different gaming consoles plugged into the same little TV, starting with the Atari 2600. So that
Nice.
and what I mean, it's probably the only time in my life that My Room Anywhere was popular.
Well, and,
But it was.
and you know, Aaron, I think, comes from the same generation. This was, 92, 93-ish. So,
Yep.
But now that game is that I had that game. We played that where you could play as a wizard or barbarian or that's
Why
gonna
can't
be
I can't remember it. I'm embarrassed. I should be ashamed of myself.
Same here.
I don't think I ever played it. Maybe I played it at the arcade. I know there was a console version of it, but do you actually, it's funny that we were talking, I think I segued us into video games. Were you ever into or still into doing any like RPGs consoles games or PC games or anything like that?
I don't. I was a big Madden junkie, playing football, John Madden football. So the last time I played that one, though, it had to be prior to when we started Jetpack 7, though, because I don't have any spare time anymore to do that. But I mean, I have fond memories of, being, and just, being really good at that game. I probably shouldn't even admit this, but I was really good at that. Enough where if anyone else claimed that they were good at that, and I'd be like, why did you come over and play? And they found out they weren't that good. So but
schooled them. I can't keep up with them because now you need like all 10 digits to be able to use these controllers to keep up. And I'm still at the NES or Super NES stage where, it's 2 thumbs and
my
the button
nephews
here and there.
have attempted to teach me, and it's been like a year since we've done this, but they introduced me to Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
And I mean, wow. But I don't typically, like on a day-to-day basis, I do not feel old. Not at all. Don't let all this gray fool you. And but like you said,
or
Brett,
lack thereof.
Well, see, it's a good thing this is an audio-only podcast. But being given the controller and they're just like, so boop, 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 and they give me a list of 10 things, and it's just a controller full of buttons. And it's like, well, back on the Atari, we just needed a joystick and a button. 2 of you are fancy, but
or the dial. Or the dial,
I mean,
like the pad.
no, it's for Pong, sure, but now we're just regressing.
Yeah.
Well,
we're moving
watching,
backwards.
Like my wife, that was probably my last experience with playing video games. She's a big Final Fantasy and Assassin's Creed person. She loves playing those, and I like watching it because I'm pulled in by the graphics and just
gorgeous.
I'm sucked in by these games, and I'll just sit there and watch her play for about a half hour or so and just be like, that is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So, and then I'm back off doing my own thing. So, but it's really neat to see how far things. I mean, these kids these days don't know how they have, how good they have it. That's what I feel
the
like
voice.
saying,
That's great. Yes.
Okay, so to be mindful of your time, and I'm going to say this mindful as well, that you're so much more than this, but as an artist, as a visual artist, especially since we're here already, I wonder what on the horizon, whether it's practice, whether it's technology, whether it's availability of tools, what on the horizon as a visual artist really intrigues you? Like, what are you watching
right now? I think it's I want to see where this artificial intelligence stuff goes. I really do. And I don't want to hate it. I'm just looking at it very neutrally at this point. I think it's an interesting headspace because, we made our living for so long making art. We still do to this day. We produce pieces out of our head into the computer and it goes into a book. And so I don't worry about the artificial intelligence stuff. I just am watching it and looking at it kind of like a tool of some sort, because I don't particularly like knowing that there's an artist with a very specific style out there that is getting their stuff borrowed. I put air quotes
Okay.
around borrowed, and then showing, look how easy it is for me to create a piece that looks like so and so. And that's the
Right.
part that kind of, I guess I am a little concerned with, but there's still an opportunity. I tweeted something the other day. I don't want to retweet or requote what I tweeted because that seems lame. But it was something to the effect of like, if you really want to show your original work, show your progress. So show your technique of how you came up with the idea with this couple sketches, show that part, and then show the progress, and then show the final piece. And at that point, it theoretically legitimizes your process, and it's not just a pumped out AI piece. So, but that's the space that I'm looking at, just because I think
Interesting.
in a similar way to, I've known a lot of artists that were progressing from during the time that you were a traditional painter, going and seeing all the Photoshop people like me coming in and just changing it. The industry changed literally over 5 years. There were painters, and then there were digital illustrators, and it's so I think it's similar to that. It may not be, it might be parallel to it, but it's just we'll see how that goes over the next 5 to 10 years. But there's some people that might, I don't know, I hate to say it, but there might be some people out there that might get their, I don't know. I think there'll be some challenges for them. Yeah.
Thanks. That's really interesting. Yeah, certainly something to watch. No pun intended.
And we come from the generation where we watched, we were all in our early 20s when the internet went mainstream.
Exactly.
And how things changed so quickly, and then Photoshop and everything like that. One quick question before we wrap, just because you were talking about this. Obviously you're doing, digital art and all that. Do you still analog, i.e. pen and paper? Do you still sketch out or anything before you put it to virtual pen on computer or whatnot? Or do you use like a Wacom board or a tablet or anything like that? I'm just curious, because I have absolutely no artistic capability beyond music. So the idea of drawing and everything, I'm the guy that tries to draw a cube and I still can't get a square. So
no, that's yes and yes. So we'll at least I personally, I like to kind of sketch things out. And now it's so cool now because we have so many tools available. You have an iPad now that you can use an iPad, and you can either take a picture of what you just sketched and then bring it into Photoshop or anything like that, any similar program, and noodle it, just do all kinds of different things to it just from that sketch that you literally can just take a picture of what you were drawing and work it. Or you can physically work on the tablet itself. That seems to be where there might be other technology out there. When I first started, you would use a Cintiq. It was called a Cintiq pad, where you would instead of your keyboard, you would just use a little pen, and it was a small little 8-inch, 5-inch pad that was kind of looked like a mouse pad.
Yeah.
And you would work from there, and you actually have to you would actually have to calibrate your hand to work and see what you're seeing on screen.
Wow.
And then the Cintiq, I'm sorry, that was called a Wacom. I call it a Wacom. It might be called Wacom.
I've always said Wacom. I'm with you.
Yeah, Wacom. I don't know. I just Wacom it flowed better, but I could be wrong with that. But that's what I was talking about earlier. And then it went to the Cintiq, so I flipped them around. But a Cintiq, you could actually draw physically on the screen, and I did that for years. And now it's just, I think everyone's transitioned over to the iPads or any kind of tablet. You can get them now for a couple $100, and this is stuff that 5 years ago would have cost thousands of dollars. And but now it's a lot more accessible. So, but you think about the art supply. I remember when I went first into college, I had to spend $1,500 just to get art supplies. Just physical art supplies like markers and paper and stuff like that. And that was a load of money back then.
It's a load of money now.
1990. So $1,500 just for art supplies back then. So now it's nothing to be able to go out and spend $300 for a tablet, and you can go get some free software that's completely legal to use, that does everything I've ever been able to do in that little tablet with way more speed. So
incredible.
it's amazing how far it's got. And I remember my instructor in college, telling us, one of these days you're going to be able to draw on a computer screen. And I was just like, you got to be crazy. You're crazy. No way.
We've even gone beyond that now, because the power that's in a tablet transcends a lot of the computing power that we may have had just 5 years ago.
I know.
So
think about this. I'm going to wire up my brain. I'm going to put these little things on my head, and it's just going to squeeze out an image here pretty soon. So, but AI almost does that now anyway. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, just to what you were saying before, right? I mean, eventually all the tech converges with the creativity, and then something new will come up.
Yeah,
absolutely. There's still going to be a need for the part of the challenge with AI images right now. The fatal flaw with that is that they apparently can't draw hands. So if you see wonky hands from in an image, there's a good chance that that is an artificial intelligence part.
Really?
So that's the one. So whatever you're going to draw, I guess, draw a lot of hand stuff to keep it.
When the machines rise, draw hands.
Right.
That'll be right. We must dissent, and we just hold up open hands.
Yeah,
right?
It just confuses them. Right?
Opposable thumbs still will keep us alive. So, hey, Aaron, thanks so much. We could keep going, because I love as someone who's
this is
not
so interesting,
artistic in that way. I could ask questions for hours about it because of the creative process and everything. So we'd love to have you back at some point if you're willing, because that's just it's fascinating how you can take. I'm holding up, the DM guide and the book,
DragonsBlog. That's gorgeous.
And how the drawing and the art in these are just absolutely gorgeous. And just so people remember, it's the Game Master's book of legendary dragons. Published by Media Lab Books. I know you can get it on Amazon because I pre-ordered it. There's multiple places to get it, but if you're looking for a quick place, grab it as a dragon fan, or even as a fan of RPG is Lit, which is something, Jason, you and I talk about a lot. This is great material to read through. So
Incredible.
Aaron, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it.
It's always funny too that we had to have a discussion offline after we finished the interview about Attack Zero.
yeah, you and I did, yeah.
I think you heard that during his introduction. We didn't really talk about it. What I found interesting, Aaron, thank you for joining, by the way.
So much, it's truly a pleasure.
Truly a pleasure, and to even talk about stuff even beyond gaming, talking about their work with Hasbro and G.I. Joe,
And how much of how much of Aaron's art is in the 5th edition player's guide?
DM guide.
DM guide.
DM guide. Yeah.
I mean, like we talked about during the interview, to be right in the center of the canon of D&D 5e. I mean, wow, that's just so cool.
Well, you can even hear Aaron, when you could hear him talking about growing up and wanting to be a writer or an artist at TSR back in the 80s and all that, because we're pretty close to the same age. And now, not only being able to do it, but not at TSR, but at Wizards, which is a subsidiary of Hasbro, and look at the footprint change between when he wanted to do it in the 80s.
Oh, man.
And the footprint and the people, the number of people that are seeing his art and seeing his company's art and all of the people that work with him.
And how cool that he was, essentially discovered.
Yeah.
Right. And like so many, and this is not to minimize Aaron's work at all, because it's because of the caliber of his work that he had these opportunities. But I appreciate that here was someone with a real drive, a real passion, knew the kind of work they had to do, and then simply pursued it, were recognized, and people helped out along the way, right? Between talent and colleagues, he had these chances, and look what became of it. Just so neat. Yeah. So not to cut you off. I mean,
no. You summed it up. As usual, you could sum up things more eloquently than I can. I think this was another cool opportunity to talk to someone who is so creative in ways that I'll speak for you that we don't touch. It's not our realm. And so to always talk to someone from a different from a different angle is fascinating.
Yeah.
And his
Yeah.
the skill, go through the DM guide and look at all the material that's out there. And
Oh, man.
just know that, he had a hand in a lot of that, and just the skill it takes to draw that way. And we touched on it on the end.
Oh, yeah,
I would
beautiful.
love to hear more sometime about, and maybe it's just me being nerdy.
Could be.
The tools you use to draw now versus the old days of just pure pen and paper.
Well, and we're going to get into that in a subsequent episode in a couple of weeks. Yeah, the tech and the tools, they've changed. Okay, so let's put down our stones and chisels and walk over to the GM corner.
Yeah, stones and chisels. I'd be so lucky to be able to draw like that.
Oh, man.
For me, a lot of this week has been spent obviously in the Game Master's book, in work that we've been doing and preparing for our live play episodes.
Yes. You've been plugging away.
Yeah, plugging away. And I've talked to Jason about it. I sometimes psych myself out a bit because I watch some of these beautifully professionally produced live play episodes, from and even unique stuff like from Mythic Thunderloop. I listen to sorry guys, I can't listen to you and then write my stuff out because there is a huge inferiority complex.
Brad just breaks into song.
Yeah, and tears.
Yeah.
So because I can't beat it. But that's really where my mind has been. How about you?
Well, I will say now that our 3 sessions of live play are behind us and we're back in interviews, I will say I thoroughly enjoyed the live play recordings with you. Obviously, I just enjoyed playing D&D.
Yeah.
Playing D&D with you. And I definitely feel like I'm much more in my comfort zone talking about stuff like this, interviewing people, connecting it to real life.
Talking about Fact Zero?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I will say, so not so much on my desk at the moment, as much as just happy to be back in the proverbial saddle of what this podcast has evolved into, especially with, talking to people like Aaron, and then just what's coming in the couple weeks. And just as a reminder for everyone, and we want to make sure we say this every few episodes, but as we approach the end of the year, Brad and I will be dedicating probably a couple episodes in different ways to talking about the intersection, once again, of mental health and RPGs and all of that. It's something that's been on our minds a lot, and with the holidays coming and the stress and the research on the stress that we've known for so long, it seems like a really good time to talk about it.
Well, yeah, and I think, I'm transparent about it. I've had my struggles. I had my struggles earlier when I said I've been under the weather. Part of it was my own struggles with it, as I don't talk about it a lot, but I had some surgery at the end of 2021, and I've had some weight loss, and it's adjusted. I've had to do med adjustments, and that affected it. So it made it hard. I didn't do a lot of Twitter. I kind of sequestered myself because I knew that, and I'm not the only one. Point being, it's not about me. It's about all of us. All of us in some way, shape, or form do it. And I'm lucky that I have a friend who has you're a clinician, you're a teacher, and not only that, but there are people out there in the gaming universe that not only experience it, but also are clinicians as well. And so,
which is cool.
Yeah, I think a call out to anyone who has a clinical background and who uses gaming and RPGs and all that as a means of therapy. We'd love to talk to you.
Yep. We've talked to a couple of you along the way and thoroughly enjoyed that. There are others on the list we're working our way to get to you. So with that, everybody, as always, be well, stay well. We will see you next week.